Hello and welcome to episode 232 of First Geek 411. I'm your host, Cameron Franklin, and with me, as always, from the Great White North, Shanine. How are you doing?
Doing good. It is like a shocking early year heat wave right now. So
Ooh, what temperature is it there?
it's currently 28 degrees Celsius, which
Okay,
is,
it is hotter where you are than it is in Texas.
yeah, it's ridiculous hot for May, especially the 1st of May.
Yeah, that is crazy. Now I gotta compare. Okay, so it's 22 Celsius here. So that's crazy. When you were like heat wave, I was expecting like I don't know. Again, I got to translate because we can't speak smart here in America. I was expecting you to say like 15, and I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely probably early to get that. I was not expecting where you ended up, so I was not
No, like
expecting 28.
15 to like 22 would be like totally expected for this time of year. 28 is like, what's happening? Is it August?
Yeah, it's like y'all are already in summertime. Like y'all are ahead of us. So we kind of had a cold April, which is nice, all things considered for Texas. But um, oh man, I'm not excited for summer, but here we are. This is First Geek 411. You can find us on our social media as One Geek 411. Let us know what you think and what you're up to this week over in our Discord server. Send us an email at 1stgeek411 at gmail.com. You can watch live on Twitch Monday nights at 6:45 Mountain Time. Find the videos over on YouTube where you can like, comment, and subscribe, and then check out our Redbubble store for that merch. This week, we are going to be chatting about getting into a new hobby, as well as taking a look at a couple discussion topics around Warhammer Fest, as well as some of the May releases that we are hyped for. Before we get into that, Shanine, what have you been up to?
Several exciting things. Um, Started watching Vinland, which is a Netflix Viking anime. Um,
Okay.
it it looked interesting, but like I don't know, Netflix animes can be like they're going one of two ways. But my husband watched it and was like, "Oh dang, this is amazing."
Okay.
So now I have started it, and it has like switched directions on me like twice already, and I'm only like 4 episodes in, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I feel like
And
animes can get that like genre juke way more than like other shows. Like I know like there's a handful of other ones that I've watched that are just like instead of just being like a mid-season break, it's like, oh, mid-season genre shift. Just kidding. Sometimes
yeah,
for the worse, looking at you Sword Art Online, but like sometimes for the better.
yeah. No, it just you like think the story's going one way, and then they're like, what if we went a completely different direction that you were not at all expecting? And you're like, oh, okay. Um, but also interesting fun fact, Netflix and I believe it's Crunchyroll have two different dub casts for it. Um, Travis has watched them both, and apparently the Netflix one is superior.
Oh,
So
interesting.
there's your hot tip for watching Vinland
Did
if
he
you're
say
watching
what the
the
differences
dubs.
were? I'm curious.
The Crunchyroll one has a lot of like the big name voice actors for anime and stuff like that, but he just thinks they were poorly cast for
Hmm,
the roles that they were put in, and it's just like not as good for those characters.
interesting.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check it out. That sounds super cool.
Yeah, so far so good. I believe it just released or started releasing its second season,
Even
if I'm
better.
correct. Yeah. Um, I also finally got to play one of the new board games that I got back when we did my birthday RPG at our local game shop. Um, it's called Three Sisters, and it's like a gardening roll and write. Um, it sounded more complicated reading the instructions for the first time. Once you're actually playing it, it's not that complicated. There's just a lot of elements that make the strategy really interesting. So it was a lot of fun. I liked it.
Yeah. Have you played other roll and writes?
Nope. Think like Yahtzee is about as roll and write as I have gotten previously.
I've only done like one, and off the top of my head, I don't remember. It had roads, and you're like connecting things. That's all I remember. So I was just curious there. Like they seem like so much fun, but it's one of those genres I just like have not played a lot of board games in.
Yeah. If you ever have the opportunity, Three Sisters was really fun. And I would recommend it. Just played it the once, but it also has a solo option. So I might give that a try as
Hmm.
well. Um, and in the big news, um, me and my husband got to go to Calgary Expo this past weekend. We took a bit of a road trip, um, hung out in Calgary for the weekend, and yeah, their expo is better than our expo. Um, so it was fun going down for that. It's much bigger. They just have a better facility for it, and the bigger stars tend to come to Calgary more than Edmonton. Um, we got to see Vincent D'Onofrio
Oh,
and James McAvoy and Andy Serkis, which were all super awesome. Um, yeah, all their panels were great, super interesting. They all seemed super lovely. Um, it was fun. Um, I was devastated that Charlie Cox had to cancel,
yeah.
but
That was gonna be one of my questions. I was like, if Vincent was there, was Charlie
yeah,
there? Because
he
apparently they're
was
like best
supposed
buds
to
now.
be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone asked that in the panel. They're like, "What's your relationship like in real life?" And he's like, "Oh, we're best friends."
Maybe that was why I saw it. Was maybe it was because of a like, cause I saw that like making the rounds, and so I wonder if it was because somebody asked it at that con.
Maybe.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that was super fun. And um, I have some show and tell
Yes,
because I got
I will say I
an,
went to go look for
an
pictures
expo haul.
beforehand, and I was like, "You have." I didn't see any on your Facebook. I didn't get to Instagram before it's time for us to get started. But I was like, "That's like I wanted to see
No,
what happened."
I didn't really take a lot of pictures. It was like wildly crowded,
Oh yeah.
like madness. Oh, speaking of, talk about this before I do the show and tell. Also, cosplays, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, saw a really good Professor Garlic.
Nice.
It was so awesome. A really good Violet Evergarden, which was really cool. Um, those are the two that like really stood out. There's a pretty good like Professor McGonagall and a Gandalf and people were like really into Chainsaw Man. There was one or two of their voice actors there.
Oh, okay.
There was like a lot of Chainsaw Man. There was a lot of Hollow Knight. A few Anyas from Spy Family, and a
That's on my
surprising
list.
amount. It's good. It's so good. Yeah, two of the voice actors from Spy Family were there. We didn't get a chance to see them, but. And then a surprising amount of Bob's Burgers.
Really?
Like a lot of Louise's, which I enjoyed.
Yeah. That's fun. That seems random, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. So from Stephology, I got a set of 3 posters.
Oh, that's so cool.
That one. And
love it. Love it.
And
yes. Those are all beautiful.
Right. I saw them and was like, yes, must have. She also had kind of in the same style a bunch of like the Pokemon cities and several Legend of Zelda locations and Studio Ghibli as well. So.
And who did you say this was?
Stephology.
Okay, that's what I thought. I'll make sure before I started like clicking on random Instagrams. Oh, they have Pokemon pins. Oh my gosh. Okay, I will investigate later. I'm very interested because I have this space behind me that needs to be filled with geeky things. So.
And then from Adventure Dice, I got 2 RPG books. I got this one, Our Haunt, by Ray Ned. I don't know how to say their last name. Nejadi. It's about a found family of ghosts living in their haunted home. And you have to like avoid the living and also avoid the malignant thing living in your house as well, and also discover your own memories if you so choose.
If you so, that's going to be a hard pass for me.
It's I started reading through it. It's a DM-less system. Mm-hmm. Each player has, so there's like a limited amount of characters that you can play, and then there's also like a certain amount of rooms in the haunted house, and each player takes like a character and a room, and you're like in charge of the story when you get to that room. So
okay, you got
that
me.
one sounds super fun. It's like it does have horror elements, so if you're not into that,
I will successfully be spooked. Shanine's writing abilities will kick in, and she will say something that'll successfully spook me.
But like, I feel like it can be as spooky as you want it to be. But yeah, it sounded like so much fun. Exactly my vibes. And then also, speaking of my vibes, I got the Humblewood campaign setting from Hit Point Press. Funnily enough, Mike Fraley from Geek at Arms tagged me in a painted mini of this exact owl like 2 days before we went to Calgary Expo, and we're walking past the booth, and I was like, hey, I know that owl.
I know that owl. You can't get by me.
And then basically I just had to buy it. I flipped through it, and there was also foxes, and I was like, I'm in.
You got me. You got simple requests, and that's owls and foxes.
Yep. Also crows. nailed it. So yeah, I don't know. It just looks kind of redwoody with all of the different animals and things, and they're just so heckin' cute, and I can't handle it.
I saw that mini because like I have notifications on for all of the hosts through like the First Geek Twitter. And so like I saw your reply and I actually thought it was just a Redwall thing that someone like I didn't like look far enough up in the chain. I just saw the mini and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I just assumed it was Redwall. Oh, that is a cool looking fox.
Very dashing.
Got a nice vest going on.
Right?
That fox knows what's up.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Little Reaper Cheap.
That is adorable. It's a little like swashbuckler.
Yeah.
It's a super cool system. Or super cool campaign setting, I mean.
Yep.
Definitely into that. See, that's more my vibe. Give me cute animals versus the spooks. A+ show and tell.
Thanks.
Oh man, we have not been to a con in a minute, and I gotta tell you, I miss it. But I'll have something to report. I think next month we're going to one, and so we'll also be. Deanna's gonna go to a con with some friends, some of her girlfriends before that, but then we're going to one together in I think June, and it's gonna be our first con after moving into the house, and it's like. Look at all these walls. Sure would be a shame if we bought a whole bunch of art to cover all of these walls.
Yep. I mean, there's just so many pretty things, though.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when it's supporting, like, local artists and stuff like that. Like, you gotta.
Yeah. You see something cool? It's a local artist. You gotta do it. For me, let's see. Been watching that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I've decided that 2023 is the year of me getting to the things I've been meaning to get to for the last like 5 years. And so like it's the year of me finally making a like major effort to play more indie games. It's the year of me like finally using my streaming services to watch more anime. And so I was just like looking around and I'd heard good things about this. And so I decided I would start it. I'm only like 3 episodes in for context, but like I am really enjoying it so far. Again, based only on these 3 episodes, it could juke. Don't at me. I am loving the vibe of the like this version of the getting pulled into another world story. And I am loving the just like the chaos of like, oh, I'm a slime, but I'm like the most powerful thing in this world somehow. And the like when they first were introducing the powers, have you seen it?
Oh.
Okay. When they're introducing the powers, I was like, that's really OP. And then sure enough, they just like escalate it. And I was like, okay, you got me. I'm in. Like, it's like, oh, you can absorb things. I'm like, that seems really overpowered. You could just do a lot with that. They're like, oh yeah, if you absorb things, you can make potions. Like, okay. Like, it's like, oh, you can make like absorb all these precious stones, and then you just have them forever until you need them. And I'm like, okay, this seems game breaking, and I love it. And so, and so I have really been enjoying that so far. And then I think this technically was previous week, but we have not had time to talk about it. Watched the first half of How I Met Your Father season 2. Have you had a chance to watch How I Met Your Father?
I watched the first season and I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I think I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, granted, I'm an enjoyer. I like things. Like, even things that like I'm very critical about. Like I still enjoyed them. I will say I'm enjoying season 2 a lot more. It seems like having more episodes has given them like more space. Because even here, it's like the first half of season 2 was like longer than all of season 1, if I'm remembering correctly. And they're like using the episodes well and using the characters better, I think. But that being said, the characters still are who they were in season 1. So like if you didn't like them there, you're not gonna like them here. But I will say I'm enjoying it more. I'm more excited to see where like the season's going now after this portion. So again, don't know if that'll change your mind. This is not like a ringing endorsement from me either. It is just better than season 1. So and then on Saturday, I DM'd another game of D&D for my like ongoing campaign. Still have not TPK'd the party. Got close. I'm trying to find the right balance because I talked about this before. But we're doing the Strixhaven campaign. I was going to grab my book, but it's too far away. Doing the Strixhaven campaign, which was written for a party of 4. And I'm doing it with a party of 3. And I am trying to find that balance between like what is too easy for the 3 of them versus what is just insanely difficult. Because like the very first fight, it's like a weakened mimic. So it's not like the full difficulty of fighting a full-on mimic, but like they did that and took literally 0 damage. And I was like, oh, okay. Like just like no one got hit and they finished it in like 2 turns. I'm like, oh, cool. And then like there's a dungeon crawl they had to do. And I was like, there's no way y'all are going to make it through this with the 3 of you. So like I gave them like an NPC that kind of is the one that sent them on the quest, went with them. And so like I just played them and basically had them be like another character that could take actions in combat. And even with that, it was a struggle. Like in the sense that they probably only did like half of the dungeon crawl and were like out of spells and all of that stuff. And I was like, oh man, like what's the balance? I just feel like I just don't know what to do. I just don't have like that context for like what is the right amount of difficulty versus fudging numbers versus like to get them through. And yeah, it's gonna be something because from everything that I've read, it's like this campaign, this like year, it's over like their 4-year college years, and it's like, oh, this year's really easy. Good luck in year 2. Because apparently there's like a difficulty spike towards the end of that year, and so we're gonna just see how it goes. Like, I don't really know. Like, it's also the like, I don't know how much to warn them about. Like, that does that like take away the fun if I'm like, hey, I would recommend saving your spells for no reason in specific. Like, I just like don't really know what is like the right balance there, but it's going well. It has a mystery. I think they're digging the mystery, and so I'm hopeful that it'll continue to play out. And then lastly, I've been kind of all over the place streaming lately. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, you kind of hit on it with 3 Sisters, is I've been doing some like solo tabletop games. And so I did Founders of Gloomhaven solo on Thursday. And it's one of my favorite games. So like for context, it's one of my favorite board games. But I always forget how much fun it is. Like it's that game that like has so much setup just to get like, because you're like building up the city, and it just has so much setup because there's so many different buildings, so much different. Like even playing solo, there's a lot of setup, and I'm always like, this is a lot to get through all of this. Then I get going, and I'm like, I love this puzzle so much. I don't know what it is about that game in specific, but it just like tickles my brain in just the right way, and I'm just like, oh, we got to do this and then do that. Like, oh man, it's just so much fun. And so yeah, so I've been like going through my collection trying to find some like good solo games to play. It's like a fun way to start the day. Have you done a lot of solo games? I know you referenced it with Three Sisters, but I know you've done a lot of solo RPGs. But
I don't think I've done any. I know I have a few that like have a solo mode. I just haven't tried them yet.
yeah, I feel like it's a weird like weird in a good way, weird, but it's like a weird niche in board games, and I feel like almost in the sense that like I feel like a lot of solo RPGs get knocked for the like, well, why don't you just write a book? Um, I feel like solo games kind of have a similar thing, where it's like, but what are you doing? Like, and it's like that puzzle aspect. I just think it's so cool, and I like seeing how do different games handle not having somebody to play against. So like some games is actually like an action deck for your opponent, and they just kind of do specific things. Founders of Gloomhaven, there's a turn limit, and so you're trying to see, you have to get to a certain point by the end of the 7th turn. And if you don't get there, you lose, or if other things happen along the way, you lose. And yeah, it's so interesting to see how do they apply those mechanics, and how do they try to like it's, I think for me, part of what I find interesting about it is it's like, how do you like design the game to work with the components that you already have when you like for Founders of Gloomhaven, it's like literally all the exact same parts. Like there's no new additions, there's no new deck, there's none of that. It's just like really interesting to see how they like adapt that for playing by yourself. If people have anime recommendations, preferably on Netflix or Hulu, but on streaming services in general, send me your recommendations. And then if people have solo game, recommend games that are good and have a good solo, send them my way. I'm very interested in trying some. Now, that was also one of the reasons I asked you about Roll and Rights, because a lot of Roll and Rights are very good solo games. So, as you referenced with Three Sisters. So, but with that, I guess let's get into our main topic for this week. This kind of goes in and ties into your discussion topic that you brought as well. But one of the things that I think we've talked about before, but I really like returning to this topic from time to time, and that's the idea of getting into a new hobby, and kind of whether that's a new fandom, whether that's a new like sub hobby, getting into those things. Like, I just think it's so interesting because it's how so many people come at them differently. And so I know recently, and we're not limited to this, but like recently, you've talked about Warhammer and things like that. I'm kind of trying to go on this quest where I'm trying to actually watch anime, but kind of through that lens, like, what is it that helps you get into a new hobby? What are your, if you've had pitfalls in the past with hobbies, what have they been? Yeah. What helps you get into something new?
I think firstly, having someone to just like drag me along into it is like the biggest thing. Whenever they're excited about it and excited to share it with a new person, then I'm probably going to get excited for it too. Um, and this is actually something I was thinking about at the Warhammer tournament that we went to. Is that like all of the terms and rules and things, it's almost like learning a new language. Like, I know all the words you're saying, but about half of them make any sense to me right now. But I think also in the sense of learning a new language is that just being immersed in it is the best way to learn it. So, like, obviously you need that foundation of basics to kind of understand what's going on. But once I've got that, I just like hearing people like talk about it. Like, just talk to me like I know what's going on, even if I don't know what's going on. Like, just, yeah, I'll listen, I'll catch up. Like, you don't have to explain every single nuanced detail to me for me to understand. Like, I like just like being brought into it that way, I guess. I guess it maybe partly feels like I'm not being talked down to, which helps. And yeah, I think a little bit like I have to be thinking about it more to try and figure it out, which helps as well. Yeah.
Some similar vibes for me. I think like one of the biggest things for me is that having somebody to talk about it with. Like, so much stuff like throughout my life has been like, I think I referenced this on a show in the past, but it was like Pokemon Gold is that like, to me, the best Pokemon game because of where I was at the time when it came out. That was the one that like we were on the playground playing. Like, we were like everyone was into it. We were all talking like that language. Versus some of the other things that's like I briefly got into, but it's like they didn't stick. It was something that it was just like, oh, well, like I was interested in Yu-Gi-Oh! And played a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! But never really got into it in the same sense that I was into collecting Pokemon cards, because it just felt like collecting Pokemon cards was just a part of liking Pokemon. Even though I didn't really play the game or even necessarily know how it worked at the time. And like there's like that side of it, I think is a very big part. One of the things that kind of resonated with me from what you said is like it's learning a new language. That's one of the things that Deanna and I have talked about, so specifically with Magic. And again, I like exactly what you said of like, I know what these words mean, but I have no clue what they mean in this context. One of the things that's funny about how Magic works is people tend to turn the names of cards into verbs. So it'll be like, I will, or I guess they're adverbs. I don't know. You're better at grammar than I am. But it's like, I will bolt the bird. And it's like, that is like, bolt the bird is a phrase that is intrinsic to Magic, but literally makes no sense without the context of what bolt is, nor what the bird is. Like, these are both such like niche parts of this game that you could have played Magic for years and not specifically encountered that situation. And so I just like think that stuff like that's very interesting. And then for me, I think one of the big places that helps is like, what's my place, or what's my way to get a foot in the door? So like, using kind of trying to more intentionally watch anime. Of course, I've watched anime for years. Shout out to Toonami for making me like anime before I was even aware of what anime was. But I really liked kind of having that, like, well, what are the contexts? What are the big things? Like, what are the tent poles? Maybe that's another way to say it. So, like, I've always hated the people that are like, oh, you're just a bandwagon fan. It's like, no, people have to start somewhere. And, like, I feel that way when I've seen, like, discussions about anime in the past. It's like, oh, My Hero, One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball. It's like, these are all, like, those big tent poles of anime. Um, and, like, I've always said, like, oh, you like those? Those aren't like, oh, you need to go check out this other niche thing. It's like, no, like, you got to have your tent pole. You got to have some, like, get somebody through the door in any fandom. And so, like, that was like how I landed on that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Was I was like searching around Hulu and I saw that one and I was like, okay, I have heard multiple people talk about this before. Like, it's one I'm pretty sure Chris has talked about on the podcast. I've heard it referenced in other places. Like, I need to go or this is one that I have heard people talk about. It's probably good because I've heard people talk about it. Versus some of the other ones. It's like, and again, I don't even know names because they didn't stick with me because I didn't recognize them. But, like, I think that kind of ties into what you said about, like, getting immersed in it. Is it's like, you know what, like, I didn't really retain much about what had been discussed about it in the past, but, like, just from being around those discussions, I remember that it came up. And so I remember that it is something that I can go and, like, take a look at later on. And then again, I don't want to just, like, keep taking all of the things that you mentioned, but, like, finding, like, people that are passionate about it. And for me, a lot of that is, like, finding specifically, like, YouTube channels now that are passionate about things, even things that, like, I know I have no interest in ever doing. But like, I will watch YouTube stuff again for things I think are super cool, but I have no intention of doing. Like, there's a YouTube channel that I follow he's attempting to build a large chunk of Middle Earth as a tabletop wargaming map. And, like, he already has, like, a room-sized diorama kind of thing. And I'm just like, I am not someone that would ever make something like that, but I am all in for how passionate this person is for their channel and watching them make all of this. I have watched them cut up so much terrain that, like, I have no intention of buying, but it is so cool to watch, and kind of going down that rabbit hole. Like, another one is, like, I've watched tournaments for games that I have no intention of ever playing, because the commentators tend to be so passionate about it. And I'm just like, I'm in. Like, you got me. Like, I'm just, like, very much in that camp. Or even, like, commentators for, like, esports and stuff like that for games that, like, I've maybe played but, like, don't specifically have an interest in playing, like, long term. And it's just like, yep, I'm here. People are hyped. Like, I'm, like, such a, like, again, because, like, I'm an enjoyer. So it's like, if I'm around people that are having fun, I'm in. I feel like that's also, like, my extrovert energy. Of it's like, oh, we're having fun? Okay. What are we doing? Because I'm here. I'm ready. Like, my mom always teased me, like, in high school and stuff for youth group. Because they'd be like, oh, yeah, we have a retreat. And she's like, oh, where are you going? I'm like, I don't know. I just got to be at the church at this time. She goes, okay, what's the theme? I don't know. I just got to be at the church at this time. Like, I'm just here to hang out and have fun. Like, I'm just like that. Again, I'm just, like, that enjoyer of things. Then let's take this then the other way. What are some things that have made it a challenge for you to get into a hobby in the past? Preferably that aren't just the inverse of the other things. But, like, but what are things that have made it a challenge?
I don't know. I think having so many hobbies already makes it hard to, I don't know, figure out how you want to split your time
Mm-hmm.
when starting a new hobby.
That was going to be my first point as well. Is I am the thing that keeps me from doing this.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's weird because like my main hobby growing up was like reading, and now I don't actually read as much anymore. Um, but I've been doing like a lot of video games, which is super new for me and
Gotcha.
super weird. And yeah, I don't know. I have way too many hobbies, and I feel like I'm neglecting them all the time, even when I am spending time on one of them. Like I'm playing video games, but I should be writing. Oh, I'm writing, but I really want to be painting, you know, all the things. And then I think another thing is that a lot of these hobbies have been around for so long, and there's just like so much content and background information and just all the things is like daunting to try and learn everything or know what is important to learn
Mm-hmm.
or where to start.
Yeah. Saying where to start was another one that kind of got me. That's one of the things that keeps me out of hobbies is when there's not a low cost way to get in. And so like I'll use magic as the example, just since like that's the hobby I'm most familiar with. But like one of the things that I think Magic has done pretty well over the past several years is they started changing what they used to be called Planeswalker decks, and now they're doing Commander decks way more as their precons. I really like that because it's way more thematic, and then the decks also just tend to be better. Like that was one of the places I always struggled with. Like if I had a friend that wanted to learn, it's like, sure, the Planeswalker decks are only, I say $15, but like they're awful. Like it doesn't mean it's not a good way to learn. It doesn't mean that it's not fun, but it's the like, well, where do you go from here? You now have a deck that's not very good. And so once they started doing the Planeswalker decks a lot more, on top of it, that being a bit more of like a social way of playing the game. So your deck doesn't have to be as good either. It's a bit more of an upfront investment, like financially, but it's something that you can have and you can upgrade and you can continue to play over time versus ending up with something that you'll probably would never come back to. And so I think something like that is a really good way of getting into the hobby or getting into a hobby. And I think that like, again, like hobbies that don't have a clear onboarding method, I think is like a very big like struggle for me. And maybe this is like a sub point of there's too much, like how do you even know where to start? But like one of the things that I am interested in is creating resin dice. That's something I thought was very cool for a long time. But like didn't really have the space to do it, didn't really have the means to just get the stuff in a spot to do that. And like now we do. But then where do we start? What kind of molds do I buy? And then it's the like, how much do you invest? Like how much do you invest in like the initial setup versus the like I was talking, maybe it was to Taos, and he's like, oh, are you going to get a pressure cooker? Or like a pressure pot for it? I'm like, oh no, not right away. But then it's like, but if I was going to do more of this, that would be very helpful. And it's just like, you just kind of end up going down that rabbit hole. And maybe it's like the analysis paralysis of there's just like too many choices and you just like have to tear the Band-Aid off. And I feel like that's a bit of the challenge there is like, how do you do that? And how do you like find that way of onboarding? And so Like, again, this is a good example. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. But Deanna and I were at a local mall, and they have like it's like a toy shop that kind of focuses on miniature games as well. And they were like hosting an X-Wing, like Star Wars X-Wing tournament. I added Star Wars as opposed to like what other X-Wing. I don't know how someone's gonna know what X-Wing is and not like, but Star Wars is gonna help them if they did not know that already. But like whatever. And they're like, I was like, oh yeah, the game looks interesting, but I've never played. I'm like, oh well, you can come and you can play without having no. And I'm like, oh man, don't tempt me with a good time. Like I get to learn a new game and play in a tournament that I'm no chance to win. Let's go. I've 0-3'd Magic tournaments before. Like I'm ready for this. Like, but like we had plans that weekend, we couldn't make it. But like stuff like that. Like that's such an easy onward, and that kind of like again, I didn't want this. I don't want the things that stop us from just being the inverse of the things that help us. But like having that easy onboarding method is definitely useful. And I think one of the other things that helps me is the finding what I'm in the mood for and then going for that. So like, I was talking to Justin, Chunk the Hut, about this the other day, because he had kind of been in a video game rut, and I had been in. I mean, I talked about it on the podcast. 2021 was my video game rut, like that whole year, and I feel like it's one of those things where I think sometimes with hobbies you feel like you have to do something, and then at the other times it's just like it's hard to check out. Maybe that's another way of saying that. Is it's like, oh, I have this console, I have these tools, I have a to-read list, which, you know, I don't personally know anything about, but I hear that that's a thing. It's another one of the things I would like to do more is read. But you have all of those things and you feel like you have to do them. And I feel like, especially as I've gotten older, I've been a lot more like generous with myself when it comes to those things. Like I used to, as like a video game example, I used to be big on you play every game on hard because you want the challenge. And then now I'm like, oh man, this boss has killed me twice. Easy mode, here we go. Like I was playing Jedi Fallen Order on Sunday, and I was like, this game feels awesome on story difficulty because you just feel like an awesome Jedi. And that's the vibe that I want. Nothing wrong with playing on a different difficulty. Nothing wrong with any of that. But like, just to like be generous with yourself and what it is that you want at that time. Like, I think that that's like a big part for me as someone who, as we referenced earlier, like I'm a chronic new hobby person of like, get me a new game, get me a new XYZ. I love change for the sake of change. Like what's the new thing that we're trying? And yeah, I feel like that's such a struggle when it comes to wanting to try new things. Let alone the actual costs or any of that associated with those things. We won't even talk about that, but I think is another one for me. Kind of. Oh, do you have anything else to say? Anything else that makes it difficult to try a new hobby?
I don't think so.
All other things aside, I'm jumping on you. This one isn't in the notes, or jumping this on you. All other issues, challenges aside, is there one hobby that you would really like to try? Like no roadblocks, everything works out great.
I mean, so many, but the one that has definitely been on my mind lately is cosplay. Scares me because I feel like I am a bit of a perfectionist. And I'm like, it's not going to look like what it looks like in the show. And then also being aware that my skills are basically zero.
Yeah.
Um,
As someone who has built one piece of armor for one cosplay and using built very loosely, I've shaped one piece of foam. Can confirm. Like that's kind of in my like a struggle that I have too. Is my eyes are definitely much bigger than my skill level. Um, for me, this is not like strictly geeky, but something that I've thought would be really fun to do is to try to make mead or cider. And that's another one that like I have no clue how we would go about that other than like we've been to a couple meaderies and some cider places and I'm like, this seems great. I like this. How hard could it be? And this is like the narrator voice comes in and goes, little did he know that like this is what would ruin his life or whatever is trying to do this. But
I mean, I don't know about cider, but I think mead is very doable.
yeah, that's what I've read is that like, and again, this is me now going down the rabbit hole of like finding all of these things. Of it's like if you're going to do one of them, mead is the most straightforward and is also the least time commitment from what I've read. Like if you wanted to do wine, that can have like a huge time commitment, obviously, but like for mead, it's like 6 weeks for some of it. And it's like, okay, like that's not bad. And like I think like 6 weeks is like the long end. It's like it's probably ready before then. I'm like, it's not bad. But again, like that's like the like how do you even like again now we're in the overwhelming of like, well, where do we start? How good a quality of stuff do we buy? Like, do we just get honey, put it somewhere, and hope it turns into meat? I don't know how any of this works. Like, but that's one that like has definitely been something that I have been interested in. And then another one, this has kind of come in off and on in spurts for me, is doing stand up. Like that's something that like high school me was like really considering trying stand up. And then I just like fell out of it for like, I don't know, 15 years and just like never really thought about it again. And recently I've gotten back into watching stand up on like YouTube and stuff. And I'm just like, I have no clue what I would do, but it seems fun. And it's still like a set, like a 5-minute set. I feel like I have to have 5 minutes worth of funny jokes somewhere. Like, I just like, again, I just feel like it has to be there. But like, yeah, I like stuff like that. I think would be like, and that's one that like, I mean, it's relatively cheap, all things considered. But like, you just have to sit down and write stuff. But that's another one that I think is interesting.
See it.
Maybe this will be my challenge for myself in 2024. This is the year of indies and anime. Next year can be the year of actually reading, like I said I was going to at the beginning of the year. Reading, not for book club. And then it can be the year of trying to do a stand-up set. But with that, listeners, let us know what helps you get into a hobby, what makes it challenging to get into a hobby, and all things considered, or all things unconsidered. Maybe that's the right way to say that. Regardless of the challenges, if you could do one hobby, what would it be? And if you want to slide in a second one like I did, you do you. But let's get to our discussion topics for this week. Shaheen, what do you got for us?
All right. This weekend in Manchester, England, was Warhammer Fest, and they had a big Warhammer Expo, basically showing off all the things that are coming up. And the things that me and my husband are the most excited for is 10th edition of 40K that is set to come out this summer. They showed how a game with the new rule set would be played, and apparently it is pretty wild, and things are totally different and much more easy and streamlined, which if you're looking to get into a new hobby, and you want that hobby to be Warhammer 40K, this summer would be a good time to do it because it will be a bit more approachable of a game.
Oh man, I'm like clicking through the slideshow. I dropped the link in chat for people, and I always want to say, man, the art for this is just insanely cool. A plus to all of the people. And to your point from earlier about like not realizing how much of there was in some hobbies, I never would have guessed that there's been 9 editions of Warhammer. Like, I feel like some part of me knew, of course, because I'm a Warhammer fan now because of Henry Cavill potentially doing movies. That's so like, you know, I'm into watch lore stuff, and I've been like diving into some of that because I'm like, oh well, I got to be ready if Henry Cavill is going to be making films about this. Like, I'm going to have to learn eventually. It might as well be now. But like, because of that, I've gotten a little bit of the gameplay stuff, but I don't know much about it. And I probably would have been like, if you pushed me, 6 editions. Like, I cannot believe that there's been 10. Like, that's crazy. And I know you're not like you're just kind of getting into it. What are some of the differences between 9th and 10th edition?
Okay. So, like, so many things. There's a lot of like, so there's like the main rule book, and then each army has its own rule book. And in 9th edition, a lot of them had like, or a lot of them, all of the armies have like special moves kind of that they can do. And like they're all unique, which is a lot to learn and a lot to remember, because not only do you have to know all like your own special moves, but you need to know like what you could be playing against and stuff like that. So it's a lot to learn and remember in a game, and that is being streamlined in 10th edition. I think there's like a lot less unique things. There's also, while you're playing the game in 9th edition, there's like a lot of phases. There's like a basically like moving phases, attacking phases. And the attacking phases are like melee things, range things, and psychic phases. And that's kind of all being condensed, I believe, into like just an attacking phase.
I like that.
I think. Yeah, don't completely quote me on that one, but I do know they're getting rid of the psychic phase. So I can't remember if it's just like a single attacking phase or if it's like just going to be less, but yeah. So that's being condensed and streamlined. and then they're just like adding some new things. So to score points in the game, there's like primary objectives, and then which is kind of like whichever game you're choosing to play, the primary objectives are like decided for you, and then your army can choose like its own secondary objectives to score points.
That's pretty cool.
So that's like always been a thing, but they're changing that up a bit in 10th edition. And I don't know, my husband was just telling me today they're adding this thing that like halfway through the game you can go for a gimmick, or no, not a gimmick, a gambit. And will like if you do the gambit, you'll get 30 points automatically, which is like that's a good amount of points. And but then you'll stop scoring points for primary objectives if you decide to go for the gambit.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that'll bring in some interesting strategy, I'm sure.
I like stuff. I like those trade offs. Also, Travis hopped in chat. Shooting and assault phases are staying. Psychic is gone.
There you go.
Also, for the stream, I put up this cool picture of one of the minis that they showed off. They've got cool horns. They got a cool sword. Like, I don't know what this character is, but they look awesome. So, I'm in. But I like that gimmick. I like that. I like the idea of like you are trading off potentially like something bigger. I say not having any context for how points really work in the game, but like just based on like I like that you can kind of take that gambit and say, okay, well, I'm going to try to rush these points to try to do X, Y, Z. Because like that's something that I think is like as someone who doesn't play miniature games, like that's something that I think is so interesting about miniature games as a whole. Is like it's not just like in Magic, it's all about like building your deck, and there are certain things that your deck is trying to do, but like in general, a strong deck is a strong deck no matter what. Like it may have counters, it may have things that beats it. But like the thing that I think is so interesting about miniature games is like you could have an awesome army, but like if the objective is something that your army is not compatible with, like you may just like again like have the objectively most powerful build, but power doesn't mean anything if the objective is to get units over here as quickly as possible or do something like that. I just think that that is so interesting. And so yeah, so like the idea of like using gambits as a way of like trying to like change up that objective, I think is super interesting because again, it's just like so far out of my realm of like touch points, and it's just like, oh, all the possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like at the tournament, watching how people strategize is like, this is on like another level. I think one of the things that I was most fascinated by was just like when they would be getting towards the end of a game and like maybe running out of time, they'll just like talk out how the game would go instead of playing it and just be like, I would do this and this and this. Do you have anything that could counter that? No. Okay. So I would get approximately this many points and you would get approximately this many points and I would win. And I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah, that seems like it's like the most honor system thing of it's
Yeah.
like or almost like a legal debate of it's like yeah, you could do that, but if you rolled this, then I don't know. It's like, oh man, again, coming at it from Magic, I can never imagine anyone agreeing to something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the other thing is like for the, they're very like, I guess, honorable players just because you, and also watching them play. Like you're never trying to surprise anyone really with what you're doing. You're like, and now I'm doing this thing. And you're just like explaining all of your things. Whereas I feel like in other games like Magic and stuff, you're just like suddenly like, haha,
Yeah.
did you see that coming?
Yeah. It's like, I'm not lying to you, but I'm definitely not telling you the consequences of this action in 2 turns. Like,
Yeah.
it's like that is not my responsibility. My responsibility is to tell you what this is, what it does, and past that, it's up to you to figure it out. Like, that's super cool. Anything else Warhammer Fest that you're hyped for?
I mean, I feel like not me in particular. It looks like it's going to be a while till we see my codex come out. So, yeah, it's going to be a while for me. But
that is another weird part of like, so like, kind of been on a Pathfinder binge lately. We talked about it. Emma and I talked about it last week. Like, that's one of the weird things about edition changes for games. Like presumably in Pathfinder, so like the Magus is the class that I'm going to be playing, but like they weren't in the core rulebook. They were added back in later, but they were in first edition. So it's just like, hey, this class that you loved, psych, they're not there anymore. And like, that's crazy to me. That it's just like, oh, yep, your codex, too bad. Like, does that mean like you can't play? Does that mean you use ninth? Like, how does that even work?
we definitely will still be able to play. I think probably a lot of the main play differences will come from the core rule book, and I don't know, I'm sure there will be at least like general guidelines for playing the armies that don't have their updated codexes yet.
That makes sense. Kind of, and yeah, maybe I'm thinking of it more as like a full picture versus a like, yeah, it's like we're gonna start here, and then this is like, yeah, kind of like your foundation. It's like, okay, that makes more sense than what I was thinking. Again, because like I was thinking about it more of like a tabletop like RPG perspective, where it's just like, yep, your class is missing, too bad. Versus like a starting point kind of thing. So I like it.
And I mean, that's another thing about Warhammer as well, is that the codexes are being updated and stuff like that, like kind of all the time, even before like new editions. It's like you can have the official book, and then you have to go and download the changes to the rules because they decided to change them.
You could download the errata. Or okay, Travis says this has happened in Warhammer. Some people will have a niche army, and rules were just SOL in regards to playing their favorite armies/rules. Yeah, that's crazy to me. Like, I also like even from like a logistics perspective, I cannot imagine the stress of having to choose like which ones like fall where on the like schedule, like that the project management of that. I can just not imagine upsetting those people like that. Like, I just like there's like I think the stress of upsetting people would stress me out more than trying to get the rules right. But like announcing like, hey, this is just isn't going to be there right away. It'll be there eventually. And it's like, oh, but it's not going to be fast enough. Like, I just feel like I would be so stressed with that. Oh man. Listeners, if you're in to Warhammer, let us know what you think of 10th edition changes. What are you hyped for? Or if you play other tabletop games. Like I said, I know there's like the Middle Earth one. There's a handful of other ones. Let us know what tabletop games you play. You have my attention. For the last part, we were going to kind of talk through some of the big releases. We've already kind of gone a bit long, so we'll cut this short. But instead of taking a look at all kinds of things, I want to just kind of talk about a handful of movies that are coming out in the month of May. And I'm curious, Shanine, what is your excitement? Are you likely to go and see these in theater, or are these like theater movies, streaming movies? If I had to watch them, movies, and probably never movies. And so, the three that I wanted to talk about is on May 5th, we're getting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Where are you at? I know we've kind of talked general MCU stuff several times, but where are you at with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
Yeah, so I am, generally speaking, less excited for MCU stuff right now, but I am fairly excited for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Got Will Poulter in there, which I'm excited for. And it also looks like it's going to be sad. And as we know, I am here for the sads.
You do like the big sad much more than I do.
So yeah, there's a good chance I'll see this one in theaters. Probably not immediately, but
we're going to see this in theater. We already have our tickets. We're ready to go. And I'm very interested. It's for a lot of the reasons that you've talked about. Like, it seems like as James Gunn's send off from doing MCU projects, presumably, I'm interested kind of in that place. Like, the Guardians have meant so much to him in terms of like bringing these characters that people didn't really know and like making them like a major part of the MCU. And so like kind of getting to see him like close out that chapter. Yeah, it also seems like there's going to be like, I mean, I'm sure tons of jokes, but like, it also seems like there's going to be some good emotional beats, and like, I'm really excited to see what that's going to be, if they're going to stick, what all that's going to look like. I've already watched some like spoiler free reviews from people that went to the screeners. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that one. The next one, Fast 10, coming out May 19th. Where are you at with the Fast and the Furious franchise?
I have seen one Fast and Furious movie.
That is one more than I've seen.
And yeah, you know, we like fast cars. Why not? But I will not be watching it on purpose, probably.
Yeah. I'm in the same place you are. Like, I have seen bits of probably most of the Fast movies, mostly thanks to YouTube, but like, I have not seen any of them. I've not seen all of any of them. I guess I'll say it that way. I've seen large chunks of probably like the first 2 or 3. But yeah, this is one that like if I was with people and they wanted to watch it, I would gladly go and do that, but isn't something that I specifically am going to theaters to see. Nor is it something I would specifically watch on streaming unless I somehow got talked into doing a full-on like binge of all of the Fast movies, but like, you know, for the content. Kind of equivalent to like what you did with the Halloween movies. Like, and then lastly, The Little Mermaid coming out May 26th. What is your interest level in that one?
So I have hated all of the live action remakes so far. They're just, I don't like them. I don't think they have tried to do anything new other than make it live action. It's like I still don't really know what they're trying to do with them. I feel like making them live action, they could have been remaking these classics for the adult audience that enjoyed them as kids, but they're not like really updating the stories at all for an adult audience. They're just making it live action. And like kids, generally speaking, don't like live action as much as they like animated things. So I don't really know who they're making these for.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably watch it on streaming just because I'm curious, but I already know that I'm probably not going to like it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. We will probably see this in theater. Deanna is a big Little Mermaid fan. And so I don't think we already have tickets, but we probably will go see it in theater. I'm hopeful. Like, I guess that's the thing to say. Like, all of the stuff that they've put out for it so far, which I mean, the point of it is literally to get you hyped up, but like all the stuff that they put out so far, I thought was very well done. I'm very excited for like the singing that they've done and like the time, like again, I don't think they put out like full songs, but for what they've done, I'm very excited for how well like that seems like they're going to do it. Similar to what you were talking about, one of the things that has scared me about all of these is that you either get your like Lion King, which is like almost 1-to-1 the cartoon, or you also isn't really live action, but that's a whole different discussion. But or you get your Mulan, which like really feels like it missed the mark of what like that could have been, where like it felt like they wanted it to be more of like an action film, but then didn't really embrace it being an action film. Like they got rid of Mushu because they wanted to be more like authentic to the story and like have less of that magical elements, but then there were still a bunch of other magical elements that may have been more authentic to the story of Mulan, like admittedly. I don't know the full context of that story, but like it just seemed like they didn't really know what changes they wanted to make there. And so like if I had to choose, I hope this lands more on the side of Lion King. Like I liked that one, and that's because I like the 1993 Lion King movie. Like and so if I had to choose, I definitely would choose that for it to fall on that side of being a more like 1-to-1. Like I would say for me, like Aladdin probably hit that middle ground the best, where like they made some good changes to that story, but it's not solely retelling, or it's not like a huge departure from the other one, from the actual like animated film. But even then, I liked Aladdin a lot, but again, it's because I like Aladdin. Like I don't necessarily feel like it was anything like super revolutionary from like a film perspective. But I'm excited for this one, and again, like I hope it lands. I hope this is the one that they like, if they're going to keep going through and redoing their classics instead of redoing the ones that like didn't land the first time, like something's got to hit at some point, right? Like, I say that as like, didn't Beauty and the Beast break $1 billion and Lion King as well? So like these have all done well theatrically, but I don't know. I don't know. So, yeah. Any final thoughts on those films?
No, I think I feel like I'm just still waiting for like a movie that makes me want to go back to the theaters.
I can get that. It wasn't James Cameron's Avatar, The Way of Water. Again, I say as somebody who saw that in theater and enjoyed it, but like, also props to you on using those hours of your life for something else. Shots fired, The Way of Water. That's not, I didn't intend this to necessarily be like a knock against that film, but this is kind of where we ended up. Again, I enjoyed that one. But yeah, listeners, let us know what you think. Are you excited for Guardians? Are you excited for Fast X and The Little Mermaid? Let us know what you think. Again, you can do that on our social media. We are OneGeek411. You can also let us know over in the Discord, where you can hang out with us between episodes. Oh, and I forgot to put this down. Book club for next month. I forgot to actually add this into the notes. I meant to come in and paste that in. Let me get over to said Discord very quickly. Next month, we will be reading Femme Family Munitrol by Tove Jansson.
We'll check it before book club.
I was like, do we know? Because I don't, and I'm also, notoriously bad at pronouncing names. So it was the like, is this a super famous person that I just do not know the name of because I've never read their name out loud before. But that'll be May 25th, right here on twitch.tv/onegeek411, where you can hang out with us Monday nights, 6:45 Mountain Time. And you can go and find those videos over on YouTube where you can like, comment, and subscribe. Then, if you would like to reach out to us at our personal social medias, you can do that as well. Mine is Humar Whittle.
I'm the Hoot and Howl on Twitter and Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES, on Instagram.
And it's been a great week.
Read a book.